Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will be interviewing Most Worshipful Brother Mark Forster, immediate past Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of British Columbia and Yukon.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual four hosts. I'm Matt Appel. I'm a member of Mill Creek Lodge number 243 here in Montlake Terrace, Washington. We have Brother Craig Graham, who's a member of Kalamalka Lodge number 160 up in British Columbia, in the town that I'm forgetting the name of, Vernon, British Columbia. I've only said it 1,000 times. Very Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung, who's a member of Prince Charles number 153 in Kelowna, BC. Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth, who's a member of King Solomon number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And of course, as I said earlier, we have Most Worshipful Brother Mark Forster as our honored guest this evening. Well, first of all, thank you, Most Worshipful, for coming on the show again. We appreciate when anyone comes on at all, and when, frankly, when you're here a second time, that means I guess we didn't offend you too badly the first time. So thank you for coming back, sir.
Pleased to be back.
So today, for those who might know the timeline, not know the timeline of where exactly we are, we have completed both the Washington and BC and Yukon annual communications. They're a week after each other, so that they run right up against each other. And so Most Worshipful Brother Mark is no longer the Grand Master of British Columbia and Yukon, but we figured we'd pick his brain for how he felt things went and his impressions of the year and of Masonry in general. And so I guess just sort of to throw the broad question at you, sir, is how do you feel the year went? What were sort of the highlights and lowlights of your year in the Grand East?
Well, first of all, I think the year was fantastic.
I thought for sure he was going to say it was magical.
I knew you were, but I was going to get that. You know, we started out the year, we had our theme, we were working along, and I started traveling. I went to the Grand Lodge of Idaho in must have been September, and I had no swag. Everybody's handing out pins and cards and all kinds of things. I had no swag, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that idea that I had no swag. So we had to get some swag. And being this was a magical year, as y'all know, I had to get some swag. So we created ties, the swag tie. Then we got one up that because people didn't like the ties. They wanted bow ties. So we got bow ties.
I need to get one of those. I have the regular tie, but I need that.
they're limited now. My year's over. But then, you know, even one up that. What do you need for magic?
A magic cards. Trick. Oh, cards. Yes.
Deck of magic cards. We got swag this year. And all I can say is that having swag sure changes the way everybody approaches you when you show up places. Everybody wants the swag. So you're pretty popular. So anyway, having said that, you know, it wasn't about the swag. The year was really about demonstrating the magic in each of us. You know, showing that inner magic that we have out to the community, to our fellow brethren, to our in our workplace, everywhere we go, to be able to demonstrate who we are and emulate that Mason that we want people to see you as. And I think that we did a pretty good job of getting that message out there. And so that was what the message was about. You know, what did we enjoy the most? Well, we had a lot of visits this year. In our jurisdiction, it's surprise visits aren't always that common, but over the last 2 years, we had more and more surprise visits. So we did a lot of surprise visits this year. Couple in December where we brought one of the brethren dressed up as Santa Claus, a right worshipful brother wearing the apron, as Santa Claus and carried in the Book of Constitutions into lodge. So that was kind of cool. Santa Claus was there checking just to make sure that we were all still on the good list, I guess. So that was fun. We did a lot of visits out of town. One of the more surprising visits for me was a trip to Lillooet. We showed up at Lillooet. They probably had 10 or 12 members present, and we had sort of promoted that we were going to go, and we showed up with about 25. So there ended up being 33 people in that lodge room. What was most interesting about this meeting was the education that day. The lodge education that day was about recruiting new members into lodge. How do we get new members into lodge? And the group were all chatting about this. And I don't know, I'll ask your opinion on this later, but a couple of the older brethren were talking about to be one, ask one. How can we possibly go about getting new members in our lodge when we can't tell anybody about Freemasonry? They have to ask us first. And they spent good 40 minutes in their education talking about what they could do and how can they get members when they're not allowed to tell anybody about Freemasonry. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
It's a question.
I think we ask the questions around here, most worshipful. That's what I think.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, I listened to your first interview just recently this afternoon, and it's a great segue because you talked in your first message about how you were introduced to Freemasonry, in that they didn't recruit you, but they recruited you because they saw something in you and invited you out to be part of what they're doing. And you had said that it was a common theme among the guys that were part of when they were coming into your lodge. You would see somebody that were in the community or in your sphere of influence that you looked like a good person. And so you would invite them out to come and be part of what you're doing. It wasn't that you were saying, hey, you be a good Mason, come here, let me bend your arm. It was more, come be part of what we're doing and see how we interact with each other and see if that's of interest to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And me, I wear the logo everywhere. I've got it on a hat. I've got it on a shirt. It's on the back of my car. It's on my arms. It's on my shoulder. It's everywhere. And thanks to Brother Gibbons out of Creston, I now take the blue swag bags that we got from Grand Lodge and I put them in my car so that when I go to the grocery store, I'm walking out with the Masonic square and compass on the side of the bag. And it's funny, I get asked from a lot of people are you a Mason? Well, yeah, I am. What gave that away, right? And then we'll have a brief conversation. And sometimes it's a lady whose husband was involved or had family members involved. And I don't think I've ever had a seeker come up to me from that and approach me that way. But like I got somebody who says, "Oh, my grandfather passed, and we've got all this stuff, and we don't know what to do with it." And so we connect and whatnot, and bring it back to the lodge, right? And so I try to get the message out that way. And of course, all my hats have to be one, ask one on them, right? But I'm not as shy and reserved about it anymore as I once was. I don't come right out and say, hey, I think you should join Freemasonry, but I have more open conversations about it these days.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to really start to be able to do. We need to feel comfortable to speak openly about what Freemasonry is about and why we got involved and what it's done for us. And, the to be one, ask one works great if somebody sees that. It's an outward facing message. If it's an inward facing message, which I think it may have been taken that way in the past by some of our older members, it's inward. So they've taken that to say they can't talk about Freemasonry unless somebody asks them. But if we can get the message out there, by showing our symbols or our signs or things that people will recognize them, they will ask us, and then we should be prepared to talk about Freemasonry. We don't have any secrets. We have nothing to hide, right? What we do and how we together as an organization and as individuals is not a secret, right? So our only secrets are how we recognize each other to know one is a Mason versus not a Mason. That's our only secret. Everything else is fair game to share and to talk about. So that's been one of my things I've talked about a lot this year in one of the areas. And to tie that in, another area that I spent a lot of time on was talking about the entered apprentice Mason and what the characteristics are or the virtues are of a Mason that we teach at the entered apprentice degree level. And in talking about that, trying to get our fellow craft Masons and our Master Masons to understand that they are still entered apprentice Masons. You were made an entered apprentice Mason, and you are always an entered apprentice Mason. You may advance to some higher levels of learnings, but you are always an entered apprentice Mason. And the lessons we learn in the entered apprentice degree are the lessons that teach us how to change from the person we were to the person we want to be, right? So I spent a lot of time on that.
You demonstrated that quite well, Mark, at that outdoor degree we had in Lake Country. Or it wasn't a degree, the outdoor meeting we had at that Lake Country there, because we had that apprentice president who I think he had only just taken his entered apprentice degree within the previous week sometime. I mean, he was about as new as they come. And you had him, you brought him into the middle of the lodge room or the lodge area we were in on the lawn there, and said, how many entered apprentice Masons are there in this room? Please stand up. And we all stood up. I thought that was a really it's something I wouldn't have thought of doing, but I thought it worked really well, and it was really demonstrative of what we're about.
Yeah, that was the message, to get us everybody to think about that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that part of Freemasonry, and to go back and revisit it, because we hold these degrees for our entered apprentices, and every time you hear a lecture or you watch the degree, you might pick up something new from that, or something that you knew before hits you a different way. And if you really take the time to listen to the lectures and the lessons in our degrees, you can learn from that. And it's up to each one of us to take that away. If we see something or we hear something, go away and explore it. What can we do with that to make a difference? What can we do to improve ourselves, right? And I don't think we do enough of that. And I think that's probably common in most of our lives, even at work, right? When in our lives, people, they have an opportunity potentially to learn a new skill at work. And you get sent off. Maybe a good example is time management. How many of you have been sent off to a time management course at work? You just spent 2 days on a time management course. You got your credit for doing that. You came home, but what did you actually implement when you got home to make a change or to make a difference to improve your career and actually utilize those tools? And I would say that some people do that, but it's not the majority, right? So that's what we have to encourage. We have to encourage our membership to want to make a change, to want to make that difference, So, I mean, that was, what else do we do? We had some fun times. We don't get very often have a chance to present a cornerstone. So the laying of a foundation stone on a new lodge building. In British Columbia, that doesn't happen very often. It happens a little bit more in Washington. I think there was 2 or 3 of them in the last year. We had one, and we hadn't had one previously for quite a few years. I think since 2019 or 2020 was the last one. So we were over on the island in Langford, and we have a brand new lodge building over there. So we were able to do a foundation stone ceremony in Langford. So that was quite exciting. We must have had I'd say close to 100 Masons in that lodge room, which it was fantastic. Watching everybody parading down the street to go to the event. We had people from the general public there. They're in a community that has a lot of surrounded by apartment buildings. So you have to imagine there's a lot of young people living close to this lodge. So this was an opportunity for some of the people in the community to actually come and witness and see the lodge doing things. So that was kind of exciting. I was talking about surprise visits earlier. We had an interesting surprise visit. We did a surprise visit on a lodge in White Rock, and in that surprise, actually no, it was in Langley. A surprise visit in Langley, and we brought the Grand Master of Washington with us. So we had our Grand Line from Grand Lodge, British Columbia, and Yukon, and we had the Grand Line from Washington coming as well. So we kind of had a 2-for-1 that night. So
I had the privilege of being at that one. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you want to see a worshipful master wondering what's going on, why is the Grand Master waiting? What's he waiting?
Having done this job for the past year, I'd be a little more concerned about the junior warden trying to figure out if there was enough sandwiches for everybody at the end of the night.
Yeah, we used to do that. Give him a hard time, but so these were all fun events, doing that sort of thing. I was trying to think about some of the other things we did. We had a 100th anniversary celebration in Kamloops, or a lodge in Kamloops. So that was a pretty interesting event to go to and to hear about that particular event. We had the Masonic Marker Program. Are you guys all familiar with the Masonic Marker Program? So Masonic Marker is a bronze plaque. It was designed in 2021 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Freemasonry in British Columbia and Yukon. These bronze plaques are being placed onto each lodge building that is owned by a lodge in British Columbia and Yukon. And the we put up 13 bronze plaques this year in lodges around British Columbia and Yukon. But in addition to that, we put up a bronze plaque in Ferndale, Washington, at Linden Ferndale Lodge, in Linden Ferndale International Lodge, and that was attended by the Grand Lodge, the Grand Master in his suite, and also we had another plaque that we did international in Bonners Ferry, Idaho. So we actually have 2 plaques outside of our jurisdiction on lodge buildings in one in Idaho and one in Washington. So that was fairly cool. What else was cool there? The Grand Lodge of British Columbia and Yukon, actually our lodge, opened its lodge in Bonners Ferry, Idaho. So Creston Lodge opened lodge in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, under special dispensation from the Grand Master of Idaho to be able to open lodge in his jurisdiction. They then received me into lodge in Bonners Ferry, and then I in turn received the Grand Master of Idaho into a lodge building in his jurisdiction. So that's kind of probably unheard of to be able to do that. And we did the reverse scenario, was the opposite scenario in British Columbia. Bonners Ferry Lodge came up and opened lodge in British Columbia in Creston. They received their Grand Master, and then he received me into my jurisdiction. So something a little bit just fun, something different, you know. So those were some of the fun things, I guess, that we did throughout the year.
Nice to mix it up and do something different every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah.
You
So
mentioned-
business.
You
Yeah,
mentioned you mentioned about the cornerstones. Is it something that I think some of our cornerstones are often in Washington anyway, are often public buildings or other buildings. They don't have to be public buildings, but fire stations and other things. We have even done some, not so I would say cornerstones, but kind of plaques with the what's the term, Matt? We have the hidey hole behind it. The time capsule,
Yes.
time capsule kind of thing with a plaque on the front of it as a commemoration. And the Freemasons will kind of set that as if it were a similar cornerstone ceremony. Is that just, maybe that doesn't happen as much in?
Oh, that's the same thing. It's just that we don't have as many public buildings where we're asked to participate in that.
Sure.
Right. So that's why it doesn't happen as often. I think there's a little bit more of that. We did have one in Creston a few years ago. It was a brand new emergency services center set up there for fire department, ambulance, and the whole bit. And the Grand Master that year was able to perform the foundation stone or cornerstone ceremony there. I don't recall, aside from that Creston deal a few years ago, it's been a long time since we've done a foundation stone on any other building. I remember a church, we did a rededication of the foundation stone, and that must have been in 2015 or so, roughly, if I recall. Yeah. And since then, just one. Other than that, it's only lodge buildings where, so we it's not too often that you get a brand new lodge building to go and do that with.
Well, I'm hoping you'll be able to stick around for another segment here when you could talk about the rest of your year, but maybe we can, in your first interview we'd had with you, this will kind of tie in some of the outward projection to Freemasonry as well as your cornerstone story. You mentioned that there at your home, there's a plaque or some kind of a cornerstone or something that lets people know that when they come visit your house that you're a Mason, or as they drive by or whatever. And so you said you alluded that there was a story behind that cornerstone, and maybe we could tie up this segment with that story.
Well, that story was pretty straightforward. The Grand Master of that year, Most Worshipful Brother Philip Durrell, was the Grand Master 2014, 2015. He wanted to do a foundation stone ceremony, but there were no buildings available for him to do one on. He's a ritualist. He loves ritual, and he really wanted to perform that ritual. My house had burnt down previous to that, so I had just gotten back into my house. I said, well, why don't we do a cornerstone on my house? So we had a bit of a party here. We had about 50, 60 people here, and we created a plaque for the ceremony, and we had to modify the ceremony a little bit because the feeling was if we did the official ceremony, everybody would want one on their house and would want the Grand Master to do that. So we had a pretty modified ceremony, not the official foundation stone ceremony, but I still have that plaque up on in the northeast corner of the house. And if somebody comes to my front door, it's right there. It's pretty noticeable. And it basically says, presented by Most Worshipful Brother Philip Durrell to Mark Graham Forster and my wife Pauline. The dates, it's got some Masonic symbols and stuff on there. So it's a good conversation piece is what it makes when people see that and notice that. So that's just neat. Another fun thing.
Sure.
And I told my wife when I go to the Grand Lodge above, I'd like her to will that to the Grand Historian with a note that I think this was placed here by a Grand Master.
Maybe a little more lager was flowing rather than wine or corn that day. Brats and lager.
That's right. So
that's a good story.
Well, I'm sorry your house had to burn down in order to do that, but it sounds like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was just another one of those fun things we just did, right? Just having a little bit of fun.
Well, with that, I think we've reached about the end of our time for this episode. So first, Most Worshipful, thank you very much for coming back on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for everyone else who's not here at this moment, we would like to thank you for listening and encourage you to comment and give us your ideas for shows that you'd like to see in the future. Since we wrapped up our book and we're wrapping up our Grandmaster interviews, we're adrift of what to do and need someone to give us direction. So please let us know what you think. And with that, on behalf of David and Craig and Stephen and myself, thank you all for listening to the Working Tools Podcast. Goodbye.